Welcome to our Epoxy Builder Secrets series. You found it.
How do you guys like that pro tip? I just saved you a lot of hours of sanding.
This is the video tutorial training you're gonna need to know to build epoxy countertops.
And the more imperfect you make it, it typically looks more real.
This is a complete 4-part series, and in this segment, you're gonna learn how to build the substrate, the foundation of your project. You're gonna learn how to get it done right and get it done fast. Welcome to step 1.
See this edge? I'm gonna show you how to make this in 5 minutes.
These are practical building techniques designed for the do-it-yourselfer.
I mean, this looks so much like stone.
Learn how to save thousands while you refresh and renew your old countertops. These are the professional epoxy builder's secrets that you need to know. Stay tuned, enjoy the video.
Hey, Chris here. Help us on our race to 1 million subs by hitting that subscribe button.
Okay guys, in this video, you are behind the scenes with hands-on training with Jeff. We're gonna teach Jeff step by step the world of epoxy. You haven't used epoxy yet, have you?
Never before.
So you are learning from the ground up how to use these products like a pro. So Jeff brings a lot of skills to the table. You come from what background do you come from, Jeff?
You know, the collegiate background.
And now he's gonna get his master's in epoxy with in-depth hands-on training, step by step. Stay tuned, enjoy the video. All right, the first thing we're gonna do is just build a countertop. I'm just gonna show you how a countertop gets built. MDF is medium density fiberboard, so it looks like this. So you get this in 4x8 sheets at Home Depot, at any hardware store. People ask why MDF. Basically, MDF is fibers from wood, cellulose, things like that, that's been compressed and glued together with epoxy. So it's a low-cost substrate. And the reason I like it is it's pretty flat. When you pull it off the shelf, it's flat, where a lot of cheap plywood will be bowed. Okay, it'll have a crown or a dip in it, where if you pour on that, like let's say this, the plywood was like this, and you pour epoxy, everything wants to settle in the middle. And so if I do a vein and it's warped, that vein gets pushed right to the center of that plywood. So that's the first reason it's flat. Second thing is it's the same material all the way through, as opposed to plywood. Plywood is it's got little voids in it. Okay, so when you go ahead and router that edge, you got to fill in all these voids, or else that shows through with the epoxy. So that's why we like MDF. The downside to MDF is it's prone to water damage. Okay, so
how do you protect it?
Great question. Wherever you have steam transfer from a dishwasher, wherever you have an undermount sink, where you do shower panels, we use a product called Red Guard.
Yep.
You know what Red Guard is? Have you seen it before?
I saw you guys applying it.
Yeah. So Red Guard
videos.
Red Guard will stop water intrusion on the underside of MDF, but our epoxy on the edges and the top is absolutely impervious to water. So it's a great natural seal. But underneath, if you don't protect the underside where water's steaming into it and things like that, you will get it to shrink and swell and that kind of thing, where it isn't good. But that's how you mitigate the problem with water.
Okay.
I'm making some countertops right now for these cabinets.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm building some cabinets.
Okay.
So we'll actually get the measurements on these, and we'll make one of the countertops for it. So our efforts are actually going to be used in a house. So guys, here's the vanity. That's going to be a real vanity someday. Right now it's just a face frame, but you can see it's got drawers. He'll be the doors, and the sink is going to sit up here. So we'll use this as our template. So let's go ahead and measure the width of this, and then we'll know how wide. All right, toss me that. All right, so we are 4 feet. Okay, so I like to have an 1.5 inch overhang on the front, and I'm going to do an 1.5 inch on the sides as well, because I'm actually going to have end panels that butt the side of this that are actually finished doors, so it looks like a piece of furniture. So those are 3/4 inch. So by bumping it out another 1.5 inch gives us a 3/4 overhang on the sides, and then when you put drawers on this, that bumps it out another 3/4. So your reveal all the way around will be identical. Typically what we'll do is we have template material.
Okay.
This is how the strips come.
Okay.
And you just use little drops of acetone.
Yeah.
And that does a chemical reaction to weld this together within a couple seconds. So this here is a very good material to make templating very fast. So if I'm 4 feet on this, okay, we're 48, and then this vanity is 21 inches deep. Okay, so that means from the back of the cabinet to the face frame, we're 21 inches. So I'm gonna go 22 and a half because I'm gonna add my 1.5 inch overhang.
Okay.
Follow me?
Yep.
How wide? 51. Okay, we got plenty of width.
Yep.
And then we'll do our 2 cuts.
Okay.
Right now. So I'm actually just gonna do this on the table saw because it's manageable. Anytime there's a cut that's manageable on the table saw rather than using a skill saw, I'd rather do it on a table saw. So do you remember what our depth is?
Our depth is 21 inches.
On the cabinet,
Which
so
is
what will it be on the counter?
22.5.
Perfect. So I'll go right there to 22 and a half.
All right.
Okay, I'm gonna cut this. .22 and a half deep. I make a mark and then I just figure out what this is. So we're 1 7/8. So I'll just set the saw to 1 7/8. Another thing I'm doing here, Jeff, is can you see the green? You see these things here?
Yeah.
That means that's the factory edge, okay? So I'll cut this side because I know that's square on the factory side.
Okay.
So now this countertop is going to be about 3, butted on your side. So I got about 3 inches right here.
Right.
So I just split that difference and it's going to be an overhang on each side. And then I'm going to have 3/4 inch doors, so I'm going to have 3/4 of a lip around that whole thing, okay? Now I have to do a drop edge. I can either do one of 2 things. Most countertops are not 3/4 of an inch thick. If you went into a house, that would look like a really thin countertop. It would look funny to you. Most countertops are what they call 4 cm, which is about 1.25 inches or 1.5 inches. When I did granite, most granite was about 1.25 inches thick. This is 1.5 inches, so that's as close. It's just by nature of just ripping a strip and gluing and nailing it to the bottom, you get a real close visual of what you would typically see. So nothing jumps out at you as not natural stone. Okay, so that's why we laminate that. Plus we save the cost of 2 pieces. You don't need it. Now if I'm doing an island that has a pretty big overhang on it, I don't want to rely on this kind of supporting an overhang where that would be flexible, okay? So that's where I double it up in 2 full sheets. Now you have much more rigidity where it won't flex on an overhang.
Okay.
Okay, and then you still put in supports or corbels, like pieces of decorative wood that go under that cabinet that support that overhang. And most of the time that's at an island or a peninsula where it's an overhang for stools for your kids to eat breakfast at. So I'm gonna make my strips 1 inch because my cabinet comes right to here.
Okay.
So I got 1.5 inches. So if I make my strips 1 inch right here, I have 1/2 inch of play.
Yeah.
Okay, so that means I can always jam this to the back wall. I don't butt my cabinet before I hit any high point in that wall. I know that I'll hit that wall and it'll be tight at the back side. If I make it too tight right here, and let's say I screw this cabinet into the wall and that wall is bowed, I'm gonna be sitting off that wall a little bit, but this will still get me all the way back. You wanna give yourself wiggle room. So now I'm gonna cut my drop edge strips.
Okay.
Okay, they're 1 inch, so we have that 1/2 inch of play. So
right.
These strips I cut are gonna be 1 inch.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me do that right now. This is probably already 1 inch. This is left over from some strips I've already cut. I want you to butt me right there on that end. I'll just take my pencil and trace it, and then I put an X on the side that I don't want so I know which line to save, so I don't cut it too short. Just take it to the chop saw and cut that up. When you laminate strips, I'm gonna use this Titebond 2 wood glue. These are called micro pins. They're like little needles. Okay, and so the thing I like about them is you can wiggle them back and forth to bust them off flush. And also router through them, and it won't hurt your router bits. Where a thicker gauge nail will start dulling your router bits and chip them out. These I router right through and no problem. And so if you got a little too close to the edge where you're gonna put your routered edge and you router through it, it wouldn't hurt your bits. And all you really are doing is holding this in place while the glue sets up. Your strength is found in the glue. This is just a temporary tack. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's how I look at doing edges. Another thing that I like to do, especially when you're brand new, I want to give myself my parameters of where my glue should go. Okay, so I just kind of give myself a little bit of line, and now I want my glue more towards the front, okay? Because I want it to ooze out when I laminate this together. If I don't, and I put my glue to the back and it doesn't ooze out the front, I'm gonna have a little void, and the epoxy will ghost that through, and you'll see that in your finish. Your color, when you have it running over the edges, will hit that void and create surface tension and go horizontal for a minute. So you'll get this horizontal line that jumps out to the eye as, oh, that was laminated together. Where if you get ooze out, it becomes one solid line. All right, so then I just ooze glue right to the front of that. And when we teach hands-on training, these are the exact things that we're telling people and teaching people. Things that in a typical video, to teach every one of these little things takes too long. So guys, let us know in the comments, are you liking this type of content? Do you want to see more how-to, in-depth, unedited, behind-the-scenes footage of how to put glue on MDF? Let us know in the comments below. All right, so go ahead and butt me to your side.
Okay.
And then I'll just start right here at this end. You're good, you could let go.
Okay.
And then I'm just gonna push down and make sure I get that ooze out. See that?
Yep.
That's exactly what I wanna see. We are gonna be doing a rock face edge, okay? And a rock face edge is very forgiving. It's gonna give a lot of depth and look like a split stone that was like broken off to create the edge. So I'm gonna teach you how to do that.
Cool.
But let's say I got a void.
Yeah.
And I saw that. I'm gonna sand this flush because you'll feel a little lippage, you know? I'll sand that flush, but I can always take Bondo or an automotive putty. It's a great filler. And so if I don't get a perfect edge, I can do a skim coat of that, and I'll teach you both versions. I'll teach you a smooth version, and then we'll do a textured version.
All right.
So now what I'll do is I'll just get a paper towel and wipe my excess up. So I'll just come here and wipe that excess. It's nice to have a shop, but a lot of people do this right there in their garage.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't it isn't anything too fancy. So I like seeing the ooze out on the backside too. And this is also a good reason not to have it super tight to your cabinets. Because let's say I didn't wipe that and you had these little high points, you're gonna butt your cabinet if you were super tight on that measurement. That ½ inch gives you the allowance to not be perfect, okay? And that's what we like, punch perfectionism in the face, man. All right, see that butts? See how perfect that is?
Yep.
So that's why I like that method. And then I know I'm gonna just go right to my front edge so I don't have to trace that. But because I have a piece that's already there, I'm gonna come uphill, so that creates ooze out in that joint, and I butt that joint, okay? Because I want ooze out on all aspects of that. Do that next one.
It was now Jeff's turn to do what he had learned. Remember, this is easy. You got this. It's not complicated steps. Just remember, apply enough glue to get good adhesion. Use the 1 1/4 inch micro pins so that it holds everything into place while that glue sets up. Hey, don't forget to crush that like button so Jeff knows he's doing a great job. Thumbs up, Jeff.
First thing I do is just get it flush using my hand, and I get the pin nails where if they, sometimes you'll nail a pin nail and it'll turn on you and it'll even come up right back through that wood. So if you shoot wrong, that's what happens. And so get your hands far enough away that that won't come back up into your finger, which has happened to me before. And then if I shoot straight down with this particular, because these are so thin, they like to find the easiest way out. They'll bend a lot more than, like right here. See, these are much bigger nails than what we're using.
Yeah.
And they don't tend to wander like the one that we are using. But if you router through those, you're gonna hurt your router, okay?
Okay.
Your bit. So right here, angle, boom. That's what you're gonna do. And you have to pull that trigger and then the other one.
All right.
And use your thumb to make sure you're flush right here, Jeff.
Okay.
There you go. We know that we need 48 inches.
Okay.
Or that face frame has to fit, right? If I look at this, and I put this in there, I got plenty of room, right?
Yep.
Typically, I'm gonna let this dry, and I'm gonna make my next counter, because I don't wanna start working this too soon where if you start sanding this with wet glue, the wet glue just keeps coming out. But because we're going to do a rock face edge on this, that doesn't matter. Okay. So I'm going to just go ahead and keep going. Okay. All right, so if you feel the edge like right here,
yeah,
feel that there's a high point there?
Yeah.
So this is a metal sanding disc. And this is the same disc that we use to remove the drips on the underside. It's made for metal, but a wood sanding disc wears out so fast when you're working with resin. So I use this on my grinder. I kind of leave it set up to remove drips. And then things like this, watch how fast. So feel that. Clean. That's why it's better to be big than short when you make your cut. So if I were to cut that too short, I'm actually taking the shape out of square. See what I'm saying? Yep. So I err on the side of caution of overcutting it rather than under. Feel that seam? How you can't feel where I join those together?
Yeah.
So that's how you get it real perfect when you're gonna go ahead and do a routered edge, okay? So I'm not going to do a routered edge, I'm going to do a rock face edge. So I'm actually going to de-stress this. I'm going to make it look imperfect and oblong, so when I add Bondo to it, it brings it out even further and makes it look more live edge, like a piece of rock, not perfectly straight. I'm showing you that because now what I would do is I would put two edges on this. If I were to do a regular countertop, I'd be doing a 1/4 inch roundover on the top and a 1/8 inch roundover on the bottom. That way the epoxy flows over the top and then flows underneath behind, like so when it run downhill, it would roll over and the drips would stay on the back side of this. You don't want a 90 there because you get a buildup of epoxy right on that bottom edge if it's a 90. If it rolls, it follows that and it becomes flat there. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
So that's something that I learned over years of doing this, is it's better to have a roundover, but because I'm going to do a rock face edge, I don't need to do that. But I'm going to show you how I would router that in case we were doing a regular edge, okay?
To help demonstrate to Jeff both methods of creating countertop edges, I'm just using his scrap to mock up an edge to show him how easy it is to router and sand so you get a beautiful smooth face to any project.
And then I would router on the top a 1/4 inch roundover. And then on the bottom, an 1/8 inch roundover. See how much more professional that looks now?
Yeah. So will it roll over and
No,
under?
it would stop right here and it would build up drips.
Yeah.
And then I would sand it. Let me actually show you. So when I do these drips, all I'm trying to do is I actually use the shadow that it's gonna leave. I don't wanna take it all the way back to wood because then I start creating undulations. I'm just gonna use this kind of to know how far to go, and you'll see what I mean. That lets me know I'm done. I don't have to get rid of that because it feels nice to the hand, but feel right here where I went a little too far and I removed them. See how you could feel that dip?
Yeah.
So that's why I try to leave them. If I use a regular random orbital sander, it'll tear up the paper and it'll take forever. So that's why I started using a metal sanding disc. It makes your job so much easier, and people don't really understand the value of that until they tested it out and they go, wow, it's way better.
To remove epoxy drips, be sure to use a 50 grit metal sanding disc if they've hardened. It works really quickly.
So it works, it just works a lot slower. How do you guys like that pro tip? I just saved you a lot of hours of sanding, and it dulls. Look at how it's already tearing it up. It'll actually tear up your Velcro. This thing here, I'll do tons of linear footage of drips versus I'm gonna need to replace that every countertop that I do. If you're going over existing countertops in a house, it's a totally different animal. You would never want to wait for those to dry and then come in there and sand and blow dust throughout the house. You come in about 4 hours later with a paint stick and you scrape the underside of that countertop at the right time when it's gelled up but it's not hard yet. And then you scrape it off.
I don't do that on pieces that I do in the shop because I don't have to babysit that timing.
Yeah.
I could do it, I could go home for the day, come back, and a week later I could sand them off. There's no timing that, because I know I could get it off, I'm just going to get dirty. We've covered how to do a regular edge, okay? So this is that same, this is a sample board, and it has a 1/4 inch round over and an 1/8 inch round over, but this wasn't laminated. This we just use as a sample. Our typical counter is going to have that drop edge, okay? So that way when you put it on site, it's going to cover that top portion of the cabinet anyways, okay? Now let's do a rock face edge.
Ooh, see how that looks like a rock? So I have not scraped the drips on that yet, but you see this edge?
Yeah.
Does that look like it would be hard to put in?
Hard to make.
Yeah. I'm gonna show you how to make this in 5 minutes. Would that be worth it to you?
Yeah.
I'm actually roughing the surface with that same 50 grit metal sanding disc to create a foundation of visual interest. This is fun to do just to make high and low points in that front edge.
MDF is so inexpensive, it's very easy to make a sample board. And this is even a good size sample board, but let's say I'm doing this for my own vanity. Start, if you have a vanity and a kitchen you're gonna do, start on the vanity, or make a sample to get your color figured out. And the color part of it takes the most forethought, but the building part of it is pretty practical. It's pretty easy. And in doing this, just understanding there's no rules. You simply make the edge imperfect. And the more imperfect you make it, it typically looks more real. See how I didn't touch it here?
Yeah.
That's gonna look fake. So my favorite spots will be look like kind of where I destroyed it. That'll look the best. And so knowing that ahead of time, if you don't worry about it and you just gouge the crap out of it, it looks good. So it's not that hard. But the key is this tool. You would never think that a disc designed for metal is what you would use to quickly remove wood material.
Yeah.
But see how it doesn't really clog up and it stays pretty much how it looked before? That's why I use it, okay?
Let's grab some gloves, and I'm gonna show you how hard it is to do that rock face edge. Okay. So, a little history on the rock face edge. Personally, I think it's the most forgiving edge. Guys, when you're using any Bondo or body filler or automotive putty, it's really stinky. That's a disclaimer. Make sure you wear a mask, block that smell, and have fun. Let's go. So here's my Bondo spreader.
Okay.
It's been used, and I leave it yucky because you just pop it, and all that stuff comes off. You don't need a lot of this stuff. I kind of know how much I need. I just eyeball it. But when you're starting out, pro tip, only mix up what you are comfortable. Like, mix up a little bit, because this stuff will set off, and when it fires off, you're done working with it. You cannot, so it sets up very quickly, so you don't have a lot of working time. So start out small until you know what you're doing, and then put a big glob up there, you know. So if you're brand new, I would start with like, you know, that much right there, and then just mix that, and that would do like this edge, you know. And so you could practice one edge and then go for it, you know. But typically when you're brand new, you're kind of overthinking it, and that's okay. When you understand how liberal you can be with this, you understand how easy it is. You know? So this is a 2-part product. Most of our 2-part products are very finicky about the measurement. This is pretty easy to do. It's this hardener. It's really supposed to be like 2%. By volume, and I've never ever measured it. I just goop it out there and mix it. The more of that I use, the faster it sets up. I'll put about that much. Like, that's how critical the measurement is. And so if I did half of that, it would probably set up in 20 minutes. This is probably going to set up in 10 minutes. I mix it right there on the surface, and it'll leave a stain on the surface, but I'm going to add my undercoater on this anyways. So I just get this messy. So when I mix it, I'm just using that Bondo spreader to roll it on top of itself a bunch of times. Okay, you just want to make sure everything gets some of that hardener in it. Kind of get this in a big pile again. I'm just going to grab it with my hand. And I'm just going to use my hand
along the edge.
and I'm just using my hand as a trowel, okay? See how I'm not getting a bunch on the floor?
Yeah.
That's just because I've done this a lot. You'll get it on the floor. Now,
Okay.
I'm gonna take my hand,
Yeah.
and I'm just gonna slap it. That, I'll let it dry, and then I'll sand those high points down, and it'll look like a split rock face. That's how hard it is. Grab more.
Okay.
And then I'm just grabbing the excess off the top to use on the other edge over here.
So once I have this and it's all like that,
Just
then
tap it. And the more high points, typically it looks more real. So I'll step back here, look at my edge. Now because this is still fresh when I tapped it,
Yeah.
it'll sag much more than even right now. It'll retain a little bit more. So you could even come back and add more if you want.
Okay.
And that's all I'm doing right now is just kind of going through and hitting it maybe one more time, and it'll make like tighter mountains. And that's what I typically like a little more. And then I'm taking all the excess here off the top,
Yeah.
because it's just less sanding for me. And then I may come through a spot and just add like a high point like this.
Okay.
And then just use that Bondo to create like some visual interest in a spot. You know, just put like a glob and then create like a higher point there.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna come through here and just rub that underside too. Okay, I'm gonna use a piece of wood or something that's got a brand new edge on it and scrape this all off. Okay, we'll let this dry.
Okay.
And we'll come back and do the next step.
So all I'm going to do now, Jeff, is just quickly sand this. All right, 60 grit. All we're doing is removing these sharp points. Right now, it's really sharp and really rough. The way that I gauge this is I should be able to rub my hand without it hurting my hand, and then that's where I like it. But the more you sand it, the more smooth you get it. So depending on the desired look.
A heavy 60 grit sanding disc makes short work of removing the high sharp points from that Bondo application. It makes a very realistic looking rock face edge that makes your project look real because it looks like an actual natural stone. I love this technique, and it'll make you look like a DIY pro who knows how to get it done and get it done right. If you don't want such a dramatic feature, just apply less Bondo with less high and low points. This will make a subtle edge that also looks elegant and beautiful.
See that? Now it doesn't hurt, but it looks like a rock. Easier than you thought?
Yeah.
I'm just going through and squaring up any edges that are left behind from that drop edge.
Perfect. So that's what we're looking for.
Now it's time to ease the back side of the countertop.
Now what that does, just feel that versus like a 90, how it's rounded a little bit.
Yeah.
That'll allow everything to flow so you don't get surface tension where it pulls away from the back. We should probably make a backsplash for this.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so let's do it. This is, okay, I'm a 50 and an 1/8. So here's what I'm thinking. Because this is like a live edge,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of doing like almost an imperfect top. Like
Okay.
you took that backsplash and just chiseled it where it's like a mountainous backsplash. I'll make my high point like 7 inches or 8 inches, and then I'm just gonna cut into that. Can you believe how well it bonds?
Oh man, that stuff is tough.
You can't see any of that seam now. You can see why it doesn't matter. And you see where I dug in the most, how it looks the best?
Oh yeah. I mean, this looks so much like stone.
And look at like where I blobbed it on heavy. See how it created like a natural big dip?
Yep.
So that's why I do stuff like that. Might as well use the excess.
Remember, you can make backsplash whatever height you prefer. It's nice to measure where the plug height is so you can stay under that in your own space. That's a pro tip.
All right, let's draw out this mountainous scene.
I think I'll come like a little bit lower. Kind of get your high point. This section here. So I'll come like, oh, that kind of looks like a mountain range.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna Bondo that top edge, give it a rock edge too.
Good. Okay, so take a little bit and we're just gonna rub it on this top edge. Do that same thing, man. Nice. Okay, just tap it. We'll let that dry. That's cool, dude.
That is epic.
Hey, what's up? That was step 1 in our 4-part series on how to build a countertop from start to finish. We just got done building a substrate. The next part is pouring the epoxy. And just like this one, we're gonna get real in depth like we've never done before on the ins and outs of pouring a color coat. So stay tuned for that one. And from the Stone Coat Countertops team, you got this.